Welcome to this week's episode of The World According to Craig with Cheryl Boone Isaacs, an amazing woman and close friend who knows something about big institutions and how we tell stories. And so I'm so happy to welcome her to talk about those very things today. Thank you so much for coming.
Well, thank you, Craig. It's always a pleasure to spend time with you, as you well know.
I appreciate that. I always wonder whenever I guest lecture for your class if I'm going to be invited back, but I always try to add some value. I'm so excited to have you here, and we're going to talk about so many different topics along with Noble, who's joining us, your dog, who's amazing. Maybe he'll make a cameo, but we're going to talk about institutions and infrastructure and architecture and stories. But I would love for people who haven't Googled you to get a sense of who you are, this legend, this doyen of Hollywood and the industry and charitable giving. You were president of the Academy, and now you are this amazing executive and philanthropist focusing on so many different projects. So where did you get your start in all of this? Like, how did you, did you grow up in LA? Was this always the dream?
Oh, no, which I tell my students all the time, you don't really know the road you're going to travel. Unless, like my best friend from high school, who literally came out of the womb knowing she was going to be a nurse. And it never faltered. And I used to be kind of jealous because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I think I took more of a day-by-day attitude instead of the old, what's going to happen in 5 years, 10 years, whatever. But certainly around our dinner table, there wasn't a discussion of the entertainment business other than enjoying it and watching it and listening to it, but not in it.
It sounds like how I grew up. I had no idea that movie stars were on magazine covers for a reason. I just thought they were magically on covers and these were stories about it. I didn't even know what a premiere was. I didn't know what the Academy was or the Oscars other than gathering around the TV to watch it once a year. And yet you ended up at the pinnacle of the entertainment industry, which is amazing.
And I didn't plan for it at all.
How did you get started in it? Where did it all come to fruition for you when you were like, this is the journey that I'm on, and embracing that?
Well, after graduating from college and sort of bouncing around, not really knowing what I wanted to do, but learning about life, which at the time it was a day-by-day thing. Now I realize that was actually not a dumb thing that I did. And I lived in New York. I lived in San Francisco. But in my mid-20s, I started to think, what am I doing? I'm really hiding out here. I loved San Francisco. But at the time, there was not a lot of career possibilities unless you wanted banking or you were able to become an entrepreneur in some area of expertise. Well, I don't think I fit either way. And I had some serious conversations with self, crying the whole number. And then thought,
I know these conversations.
Right?
I've had them as well.
Which is what I tell my students now. I go, don't even just every day gather as much that you can out of life, in the classroom, out of the classroom, because it all is a build together. Right? You don't know it at the time, but I've been down the road, further down the road than you now. So I'm just going to tell you where the signs are. Okay, that's it. Right?
I love that. I am just far enough down the road to like see that, but the first 20 years of that road are traumatic.
I've done a few commencement speeches, which I do love to do. And I tell them, you know what's going to happen when you graduate? You're going to fall off the cliff. And I'm not going to, everybody tell you how wonderful and this is the beginning. And I'm going to tell you, you're going to fall off the cliff. But the good news is you're actually prepared for it. And we all fell off the cliff and we're all doing just fine. So therefore, so will you. You're prepared. It's like having your own parachute. You just don't realize it, but you really have it.
I mean, that's a very comforting statement for sure. I feel like I would have really loved to have that speech in my graduation. That is not the speech that we were given in graduation. So you fell off the cliff, and then fast forward to more recent times in post-college, and you are at the pinnacle of the industry, and you're president of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, the most prestigious organization in Hollywood, and you're an executive and an advisor to studios and to films and to filmmakers. When you look at the road behind you and the road in front of you today, how do you choose, now that you've fallen off the cliff and you were prepared for it, how do you choose what you want to do now that you're down that road?
Well, I have to tell you, it wasn't the only time I fell off the cliff. But I have to say that when I graduated, in my group of friends, I was like one of the very few who actually had a job the day after graduation.
Oh, wow.
Because I'm just that kind of a person. And it was in merchandising, and I lasted 2 seconds because I saw no road forward. And the road was limited, especially in those days. I was training to be a buyer for a department store chain. And women, very few were ever advanced to be a buyer in those days.
Yeah.
But it also was just too straight and out and boring. So I actually was a Pan Am stewardess. Because I say stewardess because those were the days.
Wow.
I know you didn't know that.
No, I did not know that. That's not in, I have not seen that in your bio.
It's very interesting. The reason is I spent my junior year in college in Copenhagen, in Denmark.
Okay.
And I got to travel Europe, and oh my goodness, was that an eye-opener. So that's what I wanted to do. My parents were horrified. You come out of college and you're going, what? And I said, I just want to travel. And this is a great way to travel. I get paid for it, not a lot, but I get to see the world.
That's awesome.
Very good. So did that for just a few years because that wasn't a career goal. It was just a situation that I was able to take advantage of.
Well, that's amazing. And it's in the line with the philosophy you said of like everything in life is part of something. And that cultural education, that living is critically important. I think we don't get enough of that.
I just was at the moment again, right? So anyhow, when I did decide to come to LA because I loved the film business. We all do. We go to the movies, blah, blah, blah. However, I also had a very successful brother in the film business. You might think that would make me feel good. And we were very, very close. But it didn't. Mainly because in those days, diversity was not, I don't even know if it was in the dictionary. And certainly not regarding race and gender. Right? No. So there was no way. He was really smart, did extremely well. They're not going to let any others, or not, and certainly from the same family. And a female, are you kidding me? So, but doesn't matter. I just have it in me, I guess. And I came down here with the cats and a car full of plants, very San Francisco. And we had a big discussion about it, and we were very close. And he was quite concerned and not actually for it, because he knew how tough this business is for all, never mind minority and female. He knew it. But I said, nope, I'm going to do it on my own. I'm going to get a job. So that's how I got started back in 1977. And the first movie I worked on was Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Very junior in the publicity department. I had no idea where in this business I wanted to work. I just looked for a job.
Got it. I had the same philosophical approach when I started, which is I knew I wanted to work in the entertainment industry. I knew I wanted to work for a studio. And I thought I didn't know how to do that. Mm-hmm. So when I was in college, I got a work study job, as one does. And they asked where you wanted to work. And I said, I want to work in the career services office, like the career center. I was like, well, if I don't know how to get the job, they will know. And so working there, I will figure it out. And truth be told, that's exactly what happened. Is an internship posting came through for Warner Brothers, and it's legendary Warner Brothers at the time, not now streaming network Warner Brothers, but
that's how I felt about Columbia. Now it's Sony. Yeah, Columbia is a division of, but very different.
Very different. Mm-hmm. And I went to the head of the career center and said, how do I get this? And she just coached me through the entire process, helped me. It was amazing. And then I ended up there in the publicity department, doing anything that anyone asked me to, filing whatever people wanted me to do, and just digging right in. And who would have thought that would take me to today, 20 years later. And so you were at Columbia on the first gig, and then what was it like? How many times you fell off the cliff again and again and again?
Well, I feel like I'm now on my third cliff, but it was wonderful, scary in so many ways because I held the industry to such high level, high standard. And because my brother was very successful, he would take me to the Oscars.
Oh,
right?
wow.
And way before I ever gotten into the business. I would go to sneak previews that used to actually happen in LA area or in San Francisco or close, right? Which they don't do anymore, which is really too sad and bad, but it's the way it is. And I was there for about a year, and then I got called from a small independent production company called Melvin Simon Productions, which you would never heard of, but you might have heard of Porky's, which is still my favorite movie from them, or The Stuntman, which was our one and only Oscar contender. And I worked there for 5 years, and I started at the very bottom talking about reading files. The president of the company looked at a wall outside of his office behind his assistant's desk, in those days, secretary desk. And he said, see all those files? I want you to read every last one of them. When you're finished, you come to me. I don't even, and I tell my students this, I didn't think for a minute, are you kidding? I'm a college grad, whatever. I went, okay. And I have to tell you, it was one of the best things ever, because by the time I finished reading everything, then he allowed me to sit in the back of the conference room while they had meetings with filmmakers. And now I have a face. I know everything about them. I know everything about their project. I know exactly what they're talking about. It was brilliant. So I was there. I started as coordinator. And 5 years later, I left as exec VP of advertising and publicity. And I went to the Ladd Company for about a year. And I'd still be there, and I tell Laddie this all the time. But the company, as many of the independents, dispersed because of the global financial situation, which does pop up every once in a while, people. It's not just now. And I thought, my goodness, between Mel Simon and the Ladd Company and other independents, which I really loved because it's small and you get to see and really participate in everything. And that was just really amazingly wonderful. But I thought I better go to a studio. So I started, the only two studios I wanted to work for were Warner's or Paramount. And knock on wood, which I won't knock because the dog will bark, Paramount had an opening in publicity. And I was doing primarily advertising, even though my title was advertising and publicity, because we hired outside people like Rogers and Cowan. And I thought, well, I'm going for it anyway. And I did and got hired. And I was at Paramount for 13 years. And progressed all the way up to becoming executive VP of publicity and communications for the studio.
It's amazing. When you think back on where you started as a coordinator or at Columbia, and then looking back on that career, was it? I think a lot of people say, oh, well, you've got to come in with a plan. You need to know that you want to go here and you want to do this. But I've had so many people on the show who didn't have that, whose plan was something very, very different. I think there's something comforting to hear from people who have embraced that journey. When you look back, was there ever a moment where you were scared or terrified of not having a plan in that, of embracing that journey? What did it feel like?
No. What I had was, my mantra was, keep your head down, learn everything you can, and look up in 10 years. When I first started, that was it. It was like, you don't know anything. And I had wonderful people around me who were experienced, who mentored, mostly men, because there weren't that many women.
Got it.
And especially in marketing then. In outside publicity firms, yes. But not inside. Anyway, and a couple of different bits of advice has, to this day, been useful. Number one, you don't know enough to ask the right questions. Big one.
Oh, so true.
Wonderful. People have wonderful ideas. Everybody has ideas. The question is, can you get them done? this was early, and I still to this day think of those two aspects because it just has helped to educate myself. And I look at everybody around me and who was doing well and who wasn't and what were they doing, especially women who came through and what are they doing that is helping them advance. Sherry Lansing being one of course, in the forefront because we kind of through our lives. When I was at Columbia, she was already a senior VP of production, and I was a peon in the corner. And then by the time I got to Paramount, when I was at Melvin Simon, we had a deal near, I think it was the last year or two that I was there, that Fox distributed our movies, and she was president of production then, head of the studio.
Got it.
And then I got into Paramount, and she had a deal there, and then became head of the studio. And
that's amazing.
Yeah.
I love those mantras of everyone has great ideas. Can you make them work? And the flip side of that of keep your head down and look up in 10 years. And it's not to say that you shouldn't be ambitious. You shouldn't look forward. You shouldn't work hard, do the right things. But I think so many people start today by saying, I have great ideas and I want to be at the front of the room.
I know.
And there's a lack of institutional knowledge and infrastructure and a lack of expertise, or of the knowledge of building expertise, which I find troubling in society, right? I'm all for, I want growth and ambition, and I want people to bring new ideas and be a part of that. But knowing the world in which you operate, getting familiar with the world you operate, building that institutional knowledge is important. Not to be political, and it's not meant as a political diatribe. One of the things that frustrated me about a new generation rising in politics is their willingness to look at people and say, I automatically know better. And I'm like, I want all the new ideas. And in business, I want all the new ideas. And I have every single one of my assistants and coordinators and managers come and participate in pitches and meetings and be at the forefront. They absolutely should be. And I welcome their ideas. And they have much better ideas than I do even. But I also want them to build that institutional knowledge, that institutional understanding of this is the landscape. This is, because if you're going to try to break the rules, you got to know the rules.
Know the rules. You can't, music teaches you that. If you don't understand music at its very core, then you can't really shine. Because you have to know the rules in order to know how to break them in a way that's revolutionary, not just disruptive.
Yeah. How do you get this? So you teach a college course now, and how do you get that across to people today, to what I say, young people, because I'm not young anymore. How do you get that across to young people? Is because I learned it by doing it, right? Looking, and there wasn't an opportunity, there wasn't a sense of entitlement, and there's a fine line between empowerment and entitlement. And you learned it by doing it. Now there's a whole lot of people. I don't know. There are some people learning by doing it, but there are some people who need to understand that you learn by doing. How do you get that even across to them?
I tell them about the road. Okay, that's for sure.
And the cliffs.
And that they'll do just fine. And the biggest barrier for all of us is ourselves. And that's a very hard lesson. I've been working on it for years, and it's constant. I can't do that. Of course, this generation has a lot more of this entitlement idea. Not their fault, which is the first thing I always tell students. Not your fault.
No.
It's our fault, okay? Because we wanted you to have a better life. That doesn't necessarily mean that you won't have lumps and bumps, because you always will. Life will always throw you a curveball. Yeah. Always. The goal is to understand how to deal with it and how to keep moving from it. That's the goal. So you can put all these sort of artificial thoughts and barriers in front of yourself, but understand you are the lead actor in your play. Period. And it's hard. It really is, because I know this, and yet there are times, even driving over here, I was talking to myself, now, Cheryl, do not go down a certain road mentally that I was going down. Stay focused. You know you can get this done, air quotes. You know you can. And it's not arrogance. It's not arrogance. It's just faith in self, you know, and stay. And sometimes it doesn't work out the way you wanted it to. The other lesson to learn is maybe it wasn't the right thing, but you learn something on this journey. And as the old saying goes, every time a door closes, a window opens. You've got to understand that.
So I love that. And there's the movie, The Best Exotic Marigold Hotel, and there's a conversation that one of the lead actresses, I think it's Helen Mirren, has with Dev Patel. And she says, I don't know if it's going to work out. And he says, it's going to work out in the end. And she said, well, what if it doesn't? And he said, then it's not yet the end.
That's right.
Which is a beautiful phrase, but a hard one to swallow, like in life when
It's
things go
hard.
wrong.
Yeah, because when you're down, it seems that everything's closing in on you. And we've all had that. And it is hard. You have to really concentrate or do some meditation or whatever.
Shut out the noise a little bit.
Yeah, well, that's for sure. And the minute you get overwhelmed, we usually get overwhelmed because of what we personally are doing and involved in. Then get up, get outside, and go and participate in something else in life that will help someone else. Now, maybe it's a relative. You know, a relative's going through a tough time. Focus on that, and how can you help your relative? Or go out and get involved with a nonprofit that helps different people in different situations get out of their situation. But stop thinking of self. It's the best way to clear that up.
I love that. We have a lot of focus on self, but there's the nonprofit. I'm often reminded of the stories that take me out of that come from helping others, from being involved in something else. And you're involved with the City of Hope, which is an incredible nonprofit. Does that serve as your escape these days when you need to?
Well, it's so needed, especially during this complicated time. It's complicated, but I constantly say it's an episode of Twilight Zone that I haven't gotten the scripts and I don't know how it ends. Okay, but it does seem like an episode of Twilight Zone, and many people are hurting in many different ways. When I got asked by City of Hope if I would get involved in their die-in for social health justice, I thought exactly this is where I like to be, because this is the core. If we're not well, then nothing else matters. And when we're not well, there's certainly a prison that we feel we're locked in. And so to assist in any way at all in getting the word out about City of Hope's initiative to help communities of color, primarily Black and Brown, Latinx, and African American, because both communities have been hit so hard by COVID, and not because COVID is seeking them out. I want to be very clear about that, because I've heard people say comments that make me think, wait, you think because you're Black that COVID? No, our communities, unfortunately, have not been part of the system of better medicine healthcare at all, okay? Whether we have been totally excluded from trials throughout history, women as well, and that is just basically wrong, okay? It's just wrong. And because of it, and also old superstitions, bad habits, I shouldn't say bad habits, but learned habits that are not beneficial for you. Right? Whether it's diet, whether it's exercise. So both communities have an incredibly high percentage of people who have cancer, who have diabetes. So COVID, this unbelievably smart virus, it's so smart. It's like a science fiction movie, this thing, right? It's really amazing.
It was Virus X, right? They did a case study on it years before COVID existed. They said the perfect storm virus would be this virus, and it was called Virus X, and it was this COVID. It matched
because each virus that comes through, and it does whip around the planet, always has, always will, and it gets smarter. It's fascinating. But in any event, But I thought I liked what City of Hope was doing. So I said, I'm in. I'm in because we need to get the word out, and especially in these two communities. And so much of it is grassroots. And, to get more involved and interested, and also with precision medicine coming through, having more focus on clinics, making sure that there are hospitals, urgent care facilities in the communities that need to be on par with the rest of the communities.
So, I mean, it's an incredible cause, and it makes me happy to know that you are helping to lead the charge on this. You have such a history with of contribution when you look at institutions, right, and institutional knowledge, and developing that institutional knowledge at Legendary Hollywood Studios, and looking at the institution of the Academy, and how to encapsulate those pieces, looking at the institution of health, and how we even begin to understand that. I think it's helpful to realize that you can have a multivariate existence. Like, you can have so many different pieces, and yet you've got to find your own your own passion, your own purpose, your own perspective, your own point of view on all of those things. I added a fourth P, but I think that's the unique component, is like there's a common thread to all of this, and the common thread is you and this experience and this whole journey, this road that you're on and that you're down, and that you look backward and forward. I think it's helpful to see that journey, because I think otherwise people like me and people like your students don't have the ability to sort of model after that. It's just all a blank slate. So no, it absolutely, yes. It's like a guiding light on that vein.
But I didn't know. When I look back, I see a path, but I didn't really set out for that path. I really didn't. It was each thing. When I went to Paramount, and I was, and when I went to Paramount, I took a huge salary decrease and title decrease, which I don't even think companies allow people to do that these days, which I find horrifying. How do you decide, can they do the job? What are you deciding whether or not they have, overqualified, which I used to hear forever, but that was a way of not getting hired, right, early in my life. It's like, oh, you're so overqualified. I'm not overqualified, but I knew it, that was just the language used. But when I did go into the publicity department, and I realized how much I needed to learn in that area, I really, just really paid attention. And after a while, I thought, I'd really like to run a publicity department. Wonder if I could ever actually do that. And it stayed in my mind. And then I got to do it. And then the next was, okay, that was great. And when I left Paramount to go to New Line as president of marketing, and like a year before then, I kept thinking, I want to be head of marketing. And not out of anything other than I love strategy, which I think you know.
Yeah.
And that's the place, is when you're head of the department and you have a great team of people that are excellent at what they do. That is, nothing's more fun than that. And then when you succeed, and even when you don't, everybody learns together, and you go, oh, wow, okay. And the biggest lessons that we all learn usually happen after some sort of catastrophe that we don't think we're going to live through, but we do. And that's kind of, I didn't set out, I want to be head of publicity. Not until I was in it for a few years, and I thought, I can actually do this. I know I can do this, And then I started thinking and working in a way of, hopefully I would have the opportunity. Didn't know if I would. And then the same thing with New Line. That was really terrific. And during, I think I was at Paramount when I actually started teaching. I've actually been teaching on and off for 20 years.
That's amazing. I think that's the most important lesson of all of this, which is that you can be on that road and see the road signs, maybe the opportunity will come along. You can digest everything around you, and it doesn't matter whether it's, your experience with your father that leads to your interest in City of Hope, or you're in publicity and wanting to expand a strategy. There's just being a part of that road and being strategic and thoughtful, but also focused on that passion, on that purpose, on that perspective that is so helpful in a guiding light in each of those ways. It's like the perfect through line is that no matter what you do, there's this overarching web of yourself that you can bring to it, and as long as you're willing to go on that journey. So that's a lesson that I'm really excited to know that you've been teaching for 20 years. I mean, it's a lesson that I'm excited to see in all of your students as they come out of it, and anybody who watches this episode.
I mean, I love younger folk. I from babies on up. They're fascinating, and their perspective of life is fascinating, and how you can help them help themselves to understand themselves. And it's a toughie. And most of us don't really get there until we're in our late 20s or more. And then we all know grown-ups who have not gotten there,
right?
Which I think is such a pity, because near the end of life, they'll look back and, we wish not to have many regrets, if possible.
Well, that's awesome. Well, I think this episode and your advice will help people get there who are watching it. And I want to thank you so much for coming on.
It's over already.
I know. It's always the most interesting lessons in the shortest time span. I'm so grateful that you came on, and I'm so grateful for you tuning in to The World According to Craig. And if you want to find out about more people's journeys, tune in next week and check in the bio to learn more about Cheryl and the amazing work that she's doing. And I'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in to The World According to Craig. When I started this podcast, I didn't know what I was doing, and I still don't. But now I have the stories of a lot of incredible people who do know what they're doing, and for that, I'm truly grateful. I hope you tune in every week for more stories just like this one.